In my past life, I was always afraid of the dark. Now I've become a part of it. At night, when the walls of my empty apartment closed in like an invisible vice, I turned on every light. Light created the illusion of life in the house. 30 years, never alone. 30 years with a man whose voice I could pick out of 1,000. 30 years with Richard. Now he wants to take the last thing I have left. Elizabeth Thompson, please sign here. The mail carrier, a young woman with short hair, handed me a blue pen. Her face held a professional smile, polite but empty. They always smile like that when delivering a pension check or a court summons. I signed, leaving a shaky scribble. My hands trembled, though I tried to hide it. "Thank you. Have a nice day," she said, hurrying to the next apartment. A nice day? What's nice about it? I slammed the door and, glasses still on, scanned the official text. I was summoned to court, 3rd District, 1 week from now. Plaintiff, Richard Wilson, my ex-husband. Then Richard came along. I met him at work. He joined our design firm as a lead engineer. Tall, with piercing gray eyes, he drew attention effortlessly. And that habit of tilting his head slightly when listening, as if absorbing every word. Our first conversation was by the water cooler. Cliché? Maybe. But life is often made of clichés. "Odd that everyone here drinks tea," he remarked, watching me fill my cup with hot water. "I'm more of a strong coffee guy." "It's our culture," I said with a small smile. "We love gathering over tea to discuss projects." "Then I'll join in. When in Rome, right?" He extended his hand. "Richard. Elizabeth." It was that simple. We started dating. I showed him the city, the places where I grew up. He spoke passionately about the future, starting his own business, breaking free from outdated thinking, seizing new opportunities. "The world's changing, Liz," he'd whisper, holding my hands tightly. "We've got to catch this wave." Opportunities were opening. We just had to seize the moment. He was 6 years younger, but sometimes it felt like 20. His energy filled the space, banishing silence and loneliness. A year later, we married. A simple registry office ceremony, a modest gathering at home. Guests included a few colleagues and his friend Mark with his wife. My friend Susan brought her famous cake. We danced to Frank Sinatra, jointly acquired property. That's nonsense. Susan slapped the table. You must have documents. I looked away. But you know how it was. He handled the paperwork, kept the documents. I'm not even sure I have the original deed from Mom. Liz. Susan leaned across the table. You can't just give up. This is your home. I nodded, but panic was creeping in. Richard was a businessman, skilled at getting his way, no matter the obstacle. And me? Just a retired accountant, used to yielding. The next days were spent searching. I turned the bedroom closet upside down, cleared the attic, checked old bags. The documents were nowhere. Mrs. Thompson, you need a lawyer, said my neighbor Margaret when I shared my trouble. My niece works at a law firm, affordable but sharp. That's how Victor entered my life. A stocky man in his 50s, shirt collar always unbuttoned, smelling of cheap cologne and cigarettes. It's tricky but not hopeless, he said, reviewing the summons. If we prove the apartment was yours before marriage and his contributions were minimal. What if we can't? I asked, fidgeting with my scarf. Victor sighed. The court might side with him, especially if he shows evidence of significant investment. I paid a retainer, a third of my pension. Leaving his stuffy office, I felt no relief, only a heavier chest. That evening, my sister Laura called. We hadn't spoken in nearly a year since our father's death when we clashed over his estate. A small cabin in the suburbs became our breaking point. I'd yielded, as always. Heard about your trouble? Laura said bluntly. Richard called Tim. Tim, her son, my nephew, always got along with Richard. What did he want? For Tim to talk you down. Said he doesn't want to go to court. He doesn't? My face flushed. He filed the lawsuit. Liz, listen. Laura's voice took on its familiar, condescending tone. Maybe settle peacefully. Give him part of the apartment's value. You don't need all that space alone. You don't get it, Laura. This was Mom's apartment. I got it long before Richard. He has no right to it. But he has connections and money for good lawyers, she snapped. Don't ruin your nerves. I hung up. Why does everyone think I should give in? Bend again, surrender what's mine, just to avoid trouble. That night, I barely slept. Tossing in bed, I recalled how I'd faded into my husband's shadow. How the vibrant, ambitious girl I'd been became a quiet housewife, tasked with creating comfort and staying out of the way. I'd once dreamed of being an architect. I showed Richard my sketches, shared ideas. He listened, nodded, but never took it seriously. You're overestimating yourself, Liz, he'd say. The market's full of talented pros. You'd be better off practical. So I became practical, took accounting courses, worked for his company, handled reports, prepared documents. Work from home, he'd decided. It's calmer for me. Calmer for him? What about me? How I slowly suffocated within four walls, losing myself. By morning, I was exhausted but resolute. No more yielding. Time to remember this apartment is my home, my fortress. I'd fight for it. Sorry, but I couldn't find the deed, Victor said, throwing up his hands. We checked the city archives. There's record of you owning the apartment in the 80s, but that's not enough. What is enough? I snapped, frustrated by his helplessness. We need to prove any improvements during the marriage were minor or paid from your funds. How? I don't have receipts from contributed too. Despair overwhelmed me. I sank to the floor, hugging my knees. In moments like this, I longed to call Mom, hear her calm voice, feel her hand on my shoulder. Mom always said, "Lizzie, don't give up. Even when it feels hopeless, there's always a way. Just look closer." I lifted my head, eyes landing on the bookshelf. Among worn classics stood an old leather-bound album, one I'd never shown Richard. Too personal, too precious. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Photos of my youth, Mom, college, the apartment's early days. I flipped through and then, tucked between pages, was a folded sheet. I opened it. The deed. The original. Notary's seal. Dated 7 years before meeting Richard. My heart raced. I kept turning pages and found another document on the last page. A note in Richard's handwriting. I, Richard Wilson, received $15,000 from Elizabeth Thompson, maiden name Carter, for business development. I agree to repay this sum within 5 years from the date of this note. Dated 1994. Money from selling Mom's gold jewelry. Money he never repaid. Money that funded his first business, not apartment renovations, as he now claimed. I clutched the documents to my chest and laughed, loud from the heart. Oh, the irony. The proof was right under my nose all along. Victor beamed when he saw them. "This changes everything," he exclaimed. "We'll prove the apartment was yours before marriage, and that much of the family wealth came from your contributions." "Enough to win?" I asked, still skeptical. "More than enough. That note is a gem." I recalled a conversation with Richard 15 years ago. We were in the kitchen, celebrating a new deal. He was in high spirits, opening a bottle of expensive wine. "You know, Liz," he said, filling our glasses, "I was thinking about how it all started. Remember that 15 grand you gave me for the business?" I remembered. Of course I did. "Without it, none of this would have happened," he continued. "Your mom's last money. You risked everything for me." I thought I saw tears in his eyes, but the moment passed quickly. "I never properly thanked you," he said, taking my hand. "But know this. Everything we have now is your achievement too." I smiled, touched by his words. Now, years later, I realized people change. Not always for the better. The day before the trial, I made a sudden decision. "Victor, I want to speak for myself." "What?" He nearly choked on his coffee. "That's impossible. You're not a lawyer. You don't know the process. Let me do my job. You'll be there to guide me if I falter, but I'll speak." He tried to dissuade me, but I was adamant. Inside, the old the years before Richard, how I poured myself into his business, his dreams. This apartment is all I have left of my past, of my mother gone too soon. Today, the man I spent 30 years with is trying to take my last piece of her. I presented the deed. This proves the apartment was mine 7 years before marriage. It was never joint property. Then I offered the note. There's another document my ex-husband seems to have forgotten. Silence fell as the judge studied the papers. In 1994, I sold my mother's jewelry to help him start his business. He received $15,000. Huge money then. It didn't go to renovations, as he claims, but to his business, the one now making him millions. I glanced at Richard. He sat pale, lips tight. I'm not asking for that money back, I continued. I ask one thing. Let me keep what was always mine. Let me stay in the home where I rebuilt myself after my mother's death, where I loved and believed, where I hope to live my later years, in peace, with dignity, without fear of eviction. I stopped. The room was so quiet I heard the wall clock ticking. Is that all? The judge asked, eyeing me. Yes, Your Honor. Plaintiff, any objections? Richard stood, tense, eyes darting. That note, it's not legally binding, no notary. But it's your signature? The judge pressed. Yes, but... And you confirm receiving the money from your wife? Richard fell silent, cornered. The judge called a recess. Leaving the courtroom, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Susan. You were incredible, she whispered. I nodded, too drained to speak. Adrenaline faded, hands shaking. Half an hour later, the ruling came. The court denies Richard Wilson's claim to divide jointly acquired property in full. The apartment at address is Elizabeth Thompson's, acquired before marriage and not subject to division. I closed my eyes, tears of relief streaming down my cheeks. Richard caught me outside the courthouse. You kept that note on purpose, he hissed, looming over me. Waited years to use it. No, Richard, I forgot about it, I said honestly. Like you forgot your promises. How you said everything we had was ours together. Remember? He winced, as if in pain. You set me up. I protected myself. We stood face to face, strangers bound by 30 years. Call it what you want, I said wearily. The point stands. I didn't judge your choices because I respect your right to make them. Now respect mine. Liz, her voice softened. I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm just worried. You're alone at your age. Laura, I'm 53, not 90. I'm fine. I'm sorry, she said suddenly. You're right. I shouldn't judge. I'm glad you kept the apartment. Her words caught me off guard, leaving me speechless. You know, she added after a pause, you sounded like Mom today. She never let anyone walk over her. Her words touched something deep inside. Me, like Mom? I'd always thought myself weaker, softer, more yielding. But now... Thanks, Laura. That means a lot. After the call, I sat by the window, watching the evening city. Streetlights, building silhouettes, tree shadows, familiar yet new, as if seen through fresh eyes. The next morning, Susan called. Liz, turn on the TV, City News Channel. I rushed to the living room, fumbling for the remote. On screen was Richard, in a suit with a fake smile. This is outright injustice, he told a reporter. Corruption thrives in our courts. My ex-wife bribed the judge to deny me my rightful share. My jaw dropped. We earned that apartment together, he continued, feigning outrage. I invested millions, renovations, furniture. Now I'm left with nothing. Is that fair? His lawyer followed, decrying the egregious injustice and announcing an appeal. I switched off the TV, hands shaking. Liz, you there? Susan's voice came through the phone. Yeah, I saw. He's lost it. Accusing you of bribery? That's slander. That's Richard, I said, surprised by my calm. He never admits defeat. What'll you do? What can I do? It's his word against mine. No, Liz. Susan's voice turned steely. This won't stand. We have documents, a court ruling. Demand a retraction. I paced the apartment, thoughts tangled. Fear crept back. The lifelong fear of conflict, confrontation, struggle. But something had shifted. Resolve grew. I couldn't let Richard tarnish my name publicly, not after everything. I called Victor. See the news? He asked instead of hello. Yep, what do I do? File a countersuit for defamation. Gather all evidence. It's clear slander. Will we win? Good odds. We have the court ruling, original documents. Him? Just loud claims. I agreed, not just to clear my name, but to finish what I'd started. To show Richard and the world I wouldn't be treated this way. I was no longer the quiet, compliant Liz, yielding for peace. The next day, we filed the suit. A new round of battle began. Grandma, is it true you went to court with Grandpa? Emily asked, brushing her long chestnut hair before the mirror. I looked at my granddaughter, a 13-year-old mirror of my younger self. Same expressive eyes, same stubborn chin. True, sweetie. Twice. And you won? Both times. I smiled, recalling events from 3 years ago. The second trial was shorter. Richard couldn't back his accusations. The TV channel's lawyer cited free speech, but the judge was firm. Free speech isn't a license to slander. The channel issued a public apology and paid compensation. Richard faded, even moved to another city. Word was his business faltered after the scandal. I didn't gloat. I just felt justice had prevailed, closing a painful chapter. Weren't you scared, Grandma? Emily looked at me through the mirror. Of course I was, I said, resting my hands on her shoulders. But sometimes you act despite fear. You defend what's dear. Like this apartment? Not just the apartment. I kissed her head lightly. My right to choose, my dignity, my life. Emily turned and hugged me tightly. I'm proud of you, Grandma. When I grow up, I want to be as strong as you. I held her close, tears welling, not from sadness, but from the fullness of the moment. My story wasn't just about loss and struggle, but about discovery, finding myself, my strength, my voice. After tucking Emily in, she was staying for the weekend, I stepped onto the balcony, the same one where, in 1989, I caught the first snowflakes. The November air was crisp and clear. In the distance, the city's lights glowed, familiar yet changed. Like me, I no longer feared the dark. I didn't need every light on to feel safe. Silence no longer oppressed. Solitude didn't scare. I thought of Mom, her bright smile, her faith in me. Would she be proud of who I'd become? I like to think so. I stood on the balcony, listening to the city's breath. For the first time in years, I felt absolute peace. Not from exhaustion or indifference, but true peace, born of confidence in my strength and clarity of my boundaries. This apartment was mine, my home, my fortress, a place where I could be myself, fearless, authentic, without pleasing anyone. No one could challenge my right to this small piece of the world. I breathed in the cold air, smiled at my thoughts, and went inside, quietly closing the balcony door. Tomorrow was a new day.